Hey everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Thanks for joining me this weekend. Today is Sunday, July 24th, and this is your weekly video. Okay, so we're still tracking the yellow boxes here on the Qs, and these yellow boxes are cycle equivalent, meaning that they identify similar points in time according to a few different astrology measures. So on this chart that you see here, this is from TradingView, and this has the time trade script installed. And you can see how back in early April, we transitioned to the positive part of the medium pivot cycle on April 5th. We did that last week on July 18th. And then the moon is switching into Leo on the 28th of July, just as it did back on the 11th of April. So this is why these yellow boxes are the same. And this is what I'm watching very closely, because I believe it's very much the similar context to what we had going on back in early April. So last week I talked about a weak rally coming up into this period that is typically very strong. Of course, the market rallied hard all last week, ripping off 5 straight green days. So is it still weak? Is it the start of a new bull run? I believe this is going to come to an end during this week, and we will see a reversal down, and I'm going to explain why. What you see on the screen here is actually the first reason why, because we've got multiple cycles turning and starting to head lower now, or within the next couple of days. Okay, so the medium pivot cycle has switched polarity. It's over to positive now. We've got the moon entering Leo, which, as you can see from past history, has a tendency to identify major turns. Sometimes they're pivot lows, sometimes they're pivot highs. I think given the recent price action, we can assume that this switch into Leo is going to be a pivot high. And we also have a magic level here at 310. That's the orange line. And you can see how price in the past has really struggled to get past this. So that's a short list of the reasons why I'm bearish. We can switch over to time trades, and I can go over that a little bit more. So looking at time trades here, I'm going to turn on the short-term waves, because that's also a big part of the context. So I'm going to be talking mostly to contextual information today, not relying quite so much on the probabilities, although they're still there. So you might notice something a little different with time trades. I did make a couple of improvements yesterday on the UI. So the first thing I did is I removed the 1 standard deviation moves up and the 1 standard deviation moves down. Okay, so each swim lane now only has 1 probability each, so that really simplifies things. I also changed the colors up. I thought that there was a bit too much red, a bit too much angry colors in the user interface, so I wanted to change that up a little bit. So we've got blue here for the pivot lows, we've got yellow for the pivot highs, blue representing ocean, yellow representing the sun, and then of course green and red for moves up and down. Okay, so that's a nice little improvement there. I also removed the 1 standard deviations from everywhere in the product, which actually took a while to do. They appeared on the influencers and they appeared on the models, but that's been done. Okay, good. So we've got more clarity now with those improvements. And what do we see here? Well, the biggest probability, we've got 79% probability of a pivot high on the 26th, okay? And then coming up this week, we've actually got some green that is kind of going against my bearish opinion, but that's okay. This is all information. The other thing that it's really important to be aware of is these teal lines coming up. Okay, so this is called the cheat code, and the cheat code is normally a purple line. Okay, this is a lunar cycle, but then occasionally it flips into teal lines. And if you go back in time, you'll notice that the teal lines often correspond with major pivots, whereas the purple lines correspond with smaller minor pivots. So we had a purple line back on Thursday, and you can see how that turned into a minor pivot as well, right as price neared this magic level at 310. So if we go scroll back in time a little bit, let's look for analogs where the teal line exists in a slowing Mercury regime, because right now Mercury is starting to slow down, and it will continue to slow down through September 20th or so. Okay, so let's go find some examples where we've got that combination. Okay, we can't use this one here because Mercury is speeding up. We can use this one here because Mercury is slowing down. So this seems to indicate a significant pivot back in September 2021. So let's keep going. We're going to ignore this one because Mercury is speeding up. And we're going to look at this one because Mercury is slowing down. Again, another major pivot on the second teal line. So this is a pair. Sometimes they come in pairs. The second teal line represents another major pivot with the Qs down at 261. And let's keep going. This is accelerating Mercury, so we'll ignore that. And this is slowing Mercury, so we'll look at this one. Again, teal line in tags a major pivot here. Down at 184 in October 2019. So you can see how this context is super important. And you know what this is telling me is there's a pretty good chance of a significant pivot around one of these two teal lines, and the probabilities are saying it's going to be the second one around August 19th. Okay, so the nice thing about this August 19th pivot is it also corresponds with this little cluster of moves down. So we can imagine a move down into that. And then the other the most confident cluster is this one here, which is up to 78% probability of a move down on September 12th. And again, that's complemented by a pivot here. So working backwards, if we think this is the biggest move down, right, in terms of price ending, let's say it ends September 20th, then as I move my mouse around, it's going to kind of create a little price path. So September 20th is a likely low. September 1st is a likely high. By the way, don't pay attention to the actual numbers. I'm not focusing on absolute numbers here, like price values. I'm just drawing out what could be a price path on the screen. And so we've got September 1st as a potential high. We've got down here August 23rd as a potential low, right around that second teal line. And then it's a little less certain. We've got some pivot highs here, August 8th, and again, July 26th. So the important thing to know is we do not know if these are going to be higher highs or lower lows. All right. So time trades provide some timing information, some probabilities around pivots. It does not like this could be chopped significantly lower. It could be chopping out a trend going higher. We don't know. This is where the magic levels really come in. And you can see how important the magic levels are in terms of support and resistance levels. Okay, so working backwards from this most confident set of probabilities is an important technique. It's something that I'm going to be doing a little bit more of. It's something that I'd suggest you doing as well. And also, don't forget all of the important contextual information that Time Trades provides here. These teal lines are super important, and you can always go back in time. And regardless of whatever symbol you're tracking, whether it's crypto or whether it's Indian stocks or whether it's indexes or Forex, you can go back in time and ask yourself, okay, what was price doing around these teal lines and with a similar Mercury regime here in the yellow line that represents Mercury speed. Okay, so that's the cues. So let's move forward and we'll take a look at spiders to see what we can learn from the spiders. Spiders looking a little bit more bullish, still has a big pivot high here on July 26th. But then we've got this same cluster of down days into, in this case, it's September 12th, or you could see a pivot low here, September 16th. But in general, slowing Mercury almost always pulls price down with it at some point in that cycle. It isn't a straight line. It doesn't match it perfectly. But if you go back and take a look at this in recent history, slowing Mercury is generally bearish for prices. Okay, we can take a look at the Dow as well. The Dow's a little bit more bearish. We've got some big moves down here, peaking September 7th, and a series of pivot lows, August 2nd, August 26th, and September 20th again. So that September 20th date keeps showing up here for a lot of these. All right, let's take a look at IWM. Okay, so on IWM, we had a nice pump this week. It regained this magic level, which is generally pretty bullish. There's not a lot of trend that we can discern here from the probabilities, but the major probability coming up again is a pivot low September 19th. If price were to drop below, like separate below this magic level at 176, I definitely consider a short position. Not gaining a heck of a lot of information here from the probabilities, and that's okay. We can take the most confident one that we've got on the board, which is 76% pivot low September 19th, and combine that with some price information and work around that. Okay, let's take a look at bonds. Bonds are kind of interesting right now. TLT, of course, is the 30-year Treasury bond, and what we're seeing is actually a fair amount of green here. So it looks like there's a bias towards recovering 30-year bond after it got smoked going from 140 down to 110. The magic level at 110 saved TLT here. So this is actually really, really useful because you can see how the magic levels have helped to identify some of the short-term lows here for TLT. So this bounce off a magic level, specifically June 16th, when we see a big green bar bouncing off a magic level, that's really positive. It took a few days to really get the trend going, but generally since then, it's been up. Okay, so the long bond's looking a little stronger. We've got a big pivot high here out in November. Maybe that gets us back to this 123 white level, or maybe even higher. Who knows? Let's look at the shorter bond, the 7 to 10 year, the IEF, and this is interesting because it's telling us a different story from the long bond. Okay, so the 7 to 10 year duration is showing a pivot high coming up July 29th, and then we've got clusters of moves down here with a pivot low. Oh, look, late September again. So late September is showing up as a pretty big inflection point for a lot of what we follow here. Let's take a look over at gold. Gold is something I love to hate. I have been ignoring gold for the most part because over the last 6 months or so, it's been what most people assumed would be the perfect environment for gold with inflation and war. And yet, what has it done? It's done worse than nothing. It's gone down from 186 down to 160. That being said, when we start to see price perking up above a magic level, after it being beaten down for so long, that starts to get my attention. So it may be a little early. It looks like we've got another few days of moves down here coming up, but we've got some a little bit more potential for some two-way trading. And the other thing I really like about gold here is after, say, August 12th, August 15th, right in the middle of this teal line phase, we start to see some green 2 standard deviation move up probabilities coupled with a pivot high over here, September 19th. Okay, so gold, it's not something I would, run out and buy tomorrow, but it's starting to show potential for some moves up here, which is refreshing, and hopefully it can actually pull it off. All right, let's look at crypto. Bitcoin. All right, so Bitcoin's been having a good run. It's struggling to get through this white magic level at about 4,070. Okay, so that's where this white magic level is. You can see how it tagged the it wicked down through this magic level here at about 20,000. Recovered, bounced off that twice, and is testing the white magic level now at 21,200. We've got a 28% chance of a pivot around July 22nd, but there's also some more down days here. So this pivot, this is a range of days. It's always best to not, get too literal about the exact day of the peak pivot, because what's more important is this combination of moves down with pivots. So after this combination finishes on July 24th, there may be potential for some moves up here. I tend to discount or ignore these single probabilities of moves up, but what I like about this is there's a completed pivot low. But on the whole, we're not getting a heck of a lot of actionable moves here from Bitcoin, other than just waiting for this pivot to finish and then a reduction in moves down. Often a reduction in probability of moves down can correlate with a move up. All right, so again, this is probably a better off as a price trade than a time trade. But what's interesting is that if we look further out, we start to see the return of a bit more green to the Bitcoin chart here. And it looks like, especially after this Mercury cycle finishes in late September, we can see a little bit more green coming back heading into October, November. So there's probably a little bit more time to spend here building a foundation, waiting for time to the time cycles to come in, and then it looks like a good bullish fall for Bitcoin. We can take a quick look at Ethereum. If I can type. Okay, here's Ethereum. We've had a nice pump with Ethereum, but as you can see, we're at the peak of the Mercury speed cycle. It looks like there's going to be a declining probability of up days. Often that results in weakening of price. What will be interesting to see if this white magic level at 1360 holds here. If it does, that could be pretty bullish for price as we head into early August. And we've got a pivot high here around August 20th. So Looks like the best kind of swing buying opportunity would be in this little gap here in early August, August 5th, August 6th. Take advantage of these small probabilities of down moves and position for this move up into a pivot high August 19th. Okay, last stock we're going to look at is HCL Technologies. We've been looking at this in for the last few weeks here. This is an Indian stock trading on the National Stock Exchange. We just had a pivot low here on July 22nd, and we've got an isolated 2 standard deviation move up here on August 4th of 33%, but that combined with the pivot low and looking out ahead, we see some increasing pivot highs. You can connect the dots here, low, move up, high. There's some small probabilities of down days, but on the whole, this does tend to look relatively bullish. I'd be certainly be careful and pay attention to price. Make sure it continues to stay above magic levels. If price is ever to drop below a magic level and separate below it, I would cut it loose. But my bias on this one would be up. Okay, so that's it for me for this week. Good luck this week trading, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you.